Have you ever felt like two versions of you are living inside the same life? One knows how to stay calm, function, smile politely, keep everything under control. The other is angry, hungry, reckless, wounded, and honestly tired of behaving. And that tension is why this movie still matters. Maybe more now than when it came out first. When Sinners arrived, people watched the surface first. The hype, the energy, the genre, the performances, the blood. But after the noise fades, a harder question remains. What was this film really seeing in us? And I think the answer is disturbing. Nearly a year after, Sinners doesn't feel like old horror. It feels like a diagnosis. We live in a time when people feel more divided inside themselves than ever. Performing oneself in public, hiding another in private, managing the image, editing the emotions, keeping things under control. And beneath all that, something rawer keeps moving. And that's why this film gets sharper with time, not softer. I'm Jay Lee, and this is Deeper into Film, where movies become a path to insight and awakening. At the plot level, Sinners look simple. Twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, both played by Michael B. Jordan, return to the Mississippi Delta carrying old pain, old memory, and hope of building one unforgettable night of music, freedom, and life. But the night collapses into horror. A vampire enters. What should have been a celebration becomes a night of death. That's the surface story. But don't think it's the deepest one. The moment one actor plays twin brothers, the film is already asking a larger question. What if these aren't simply two brothers? What if they are two sides of one split self? Not just siblings, not just mirrors, but the eerie feeling that one human being has fractured into two survival strategies. And that's why this movie hits harder than ordinary horror. It's not mainly asking whether evil exists somewhere outside us. It's asking whether the buried self inside us is still alive, whether the side of you that got pushed down in order to survive is still waiting in the dark, and whether that side might be stronger than your everyday composed life. When I say Smoke and Stack are doubles, I don't mean something as tidy as good twin, bad twin. That reading is too easy, too moralistic. This is not Jekyll and Hyde in better clothes. Smoke is the controlled self. Restraint, discipline, armor, caution is the part of a person that survives by tightening, by containing, knocking down, refusing exposure. It feels like the version of you that learned, maybe long ago, that vulnerability is expensive and the only way through is to become hard enough not to break. He's strong. But he's strong the way a sealed door is strong. Nothing gets in. Stack is different. Stack is movement, appetite, impulse, charisma. He survives not by freezing, but by burning. If Smoke says, stay in control or you will get hurt, Stack says, at least feel something before you die. He walks into the room like trouble might follow, but also like life might. That's what makes him psychologically interesting. It's not just the dangerous one. He's the self that refuses numbness, even when that refusal becomes its own kind of destruction. These two brothers are not just characters. They are two familiar human strategies. Some of us survive by becoming Smoke, composed, guarded, efficient, hard to reach. Others become Stack, restless, hungry, drawn to intensity, seeking what feels alive, even if it burns us. One self shuts life down to stay safe. The other risks destruction to feel awake. And modern life leaves a lot of people swinging between these two while pretending everything is fine. Yes, this is why the idea of the double has always had such power. The double is frightening not because it's a stranger, but because it's yours. It says what you won't say. It wants what you won't admit you want. It carries the anger, desire, grief, shame, and buried life that your public self has been working to keep out of sight. And we live in a culture of reckless self-management. Work self, family self, online self, calm self, spiritually mature self. But the more carefully a person curates the surface, the more haunted the buried self becomes underneath. And that's why Sinners has staying power. It's not only about horror, it's about inner division, about what happens when the self becomes too split to remain whole. Smoke and Stack are not simply two personalities. They are two ways the ego tries to survive pain. Smoke says, I will survive by feeling less. Stack says, I will survive by feeling everything. One hardens into control, the other hardens into appetite. Each has force, neither is free. Many viewers will want to sort them quickly. Smoke seems disciplined, so maybe he's the healthy one. Stack seems volatile, so maybe he's the dangerous one. But the film is more intelligent than that. Smoke's control comes with the coast. He doesn't only keep danger out, he keeps life out. Stack's openness also comes with a coast. He lets in aliveness, but he becomes vulnerable to whatever pulls hardest. The movie doesn't ask us to choose one brother and reject the other. It asks us to recognize both, because the real double isn't simply my bad side, it's any part of myself I've split off and pretended does not belong to me. The buried self does not disappear. It waits. It leaks out as rage, as exhaustion, as contempt, and as temptation, as this strange feeling that you've become very functional and very far from your own life. Sinners understands this. Its darkness is attractive because it doesn't arrive dressed as destruction. It arrives dressed as relief. It whispers something far more persuasive than "come ruin your life." It whispers, "You've been careful too long, controlled too long, good too long. It's time to feel alive again." And that's why temptation in this film is psychologically convincing. The dangerous thing is not only ruin. The dangerous thing is the promise of release. Yes. Smoke and Stack together reveal that a person can live split for years and call that normal. One side all armor, the other side all fire. One mastered restraint but lost warmth. The other kept intensity but lost balance. And neither is living, not fully. That, to me, is the darkest truth in Sinners. Not that evil exists, not that monsters are real, but a human being can become a stranger to their own buried life. And once that happens, the double starts to feel more real than the self they show the world. Now, Sammy matters here too, not as the main focus of this first video, but enough not to miss. Because if Smoke and Stack were the whole picture, the film would leave us only division, only the split, only a self torn between numb control and dangerous appetite. But Sammy hints at something else. He does not feel like a compromise between the brothers. He feels like the early sign of a person who might be able to carry intensity without being ruled by it. A self that does not have to amputate one side of itself in order to live. He gives us a glimpse, just a glimpse of something beyond the double. Not perfection, not some polished, enlightened self who has it all figured out. Just the possibility of holding tension with more awareness. But in this first video, I want to stay with the twins, because that's where the force of the film begins. So maybe the real question in Sinners is not, am I innocent or guilty? Which self has been running my life lately? The locked down self? The hungry self? The one that survives by control? Or the one that survives by risk? Which one have you been feeding? Which one have you been hiding? And which one is starting to look more real than the version of you everyone else knows? In part 2, I want to go further into what the film may be suggesting beyond this split and why Sammy may matter more than he first seems. Tell me in the comments, which feels closer to you right now? Smoke, Stack, or somewhere in between? I'm Jay Lee. This is Deeper Into Film. Thanks for being here with me.